Welcome. This is chapter 43 of The Spiritual Combat and a Treatise on Peace of Soul by Dom Lorenzo Scupoli. The title of this chapter is The Tendency of Our Corrupt Natures, Prompted by the Devil to Indulge in Rash Judgment and the Remedy for this Evil. Smug self-satisfaction is responsible for another great disorder, which is rash judgment. This vice, which we not only encourage in ourselves, but infuse into others, springs from and is nourished by pride. And in proportion to our acceptance of it, it is our growing conceit and danger of further delusions by the devil. For by degrees we assume for ourselves that we detract from others, foolishly imagining ourselves exempt from the sins for which we so readily condemn our neighbors. The enemy of our souls no sooner discovers this malicious tendency, but he immediately employs all his artifices to make us attentive to the failings of others, and magnify those failings out of all proportion. He goes to ineffable depths in making us aware of our neighbor's most trivial peccadillo, smallest sin, in the absence of a more glaring fault. Since therefore he is so viciously clever and intent upon our ruin, we must be no less vigilant in discovering and defeating his designs. When he suggests the sins of others to us, we must banish all such thoughts, and if he persists in tricking us into rash judgments, we are to cultivate a deep abhorrence for such malicious insinuations. Let us remember that we are not ordinarily authorized to judge others, but if we are, how seldom equity guides us, blinded as we are by prejudice and passion, and inclined to impute the worst of motives to others in their thoughts and actions. The most efficacious remedy for this evil is a constant awareness of our own wretchedness. For when we find so much room for improvement in ourselves, we have little inclination to judge and condemn others. Moreover, in sedulously seeking out our own shortcomings, we shall free our minds from a certain malignity, which is the source of rash judgment. For whoever unjustly condemns his neighbor has good reason for suspecting himself guilty of the same crime, inasmuch as vicious men are prone to think others like themselves. When therefore we find ourselves inclined to condemn others, let us inwardly accuse ourselves with this just reproof. Blind and presumptuous wretch, how dare you rashly examine your neighbor's actions, you who have the same, if not greater, sins to answer for? Thus, in turning these weapons against ourselves, what might have been injurious to our neighbor becomes beneficial to us. Even if a neighbor's fault be publicly known, let charity suggest some excuse. Let us believe there are some hidden virtues for the preservation of which God is pleased to permit the publicized deficiency. And let us hope that the fault in which God suffers him to remain for a time may eventually bring the erring one to true self-knowledge, that being despised by others he may learn the lesson of humility. Such a defeat is really a victory, where the sin, besides being commonly known, is also of the utmost gravity, and the sinner hardened in impenitence. We should raise our hearts to heaven in defense to the inscrutable wisdom of God. For we should be mindful that we have emerged from the depths of depravity to become saints, while others have fallen from angelic heights of perfection to satanic depths of sinfulness. These reflections should convince every thinking person that carping criticism should begin with oneself. If one finds himself favorably disposed towards his neighbor, it is owing to the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, whereas his rash judgments, dislike, and contempt of others owe their rise to his own malice and the promptings of the devil. Let us remember then that if ever we find ourselves too attentive to the failings of others, we must not cease until we have entirely erased them from memory. And so concludes chapter 43 of The Spiritual Combat and a Treatise on Peace of Soul by Dom Lorenzo Scupoli.